Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
I'm Bob Scarborough.
And our guest is Randy Fisher. I think your audio dropped out a little bit there, but we're most pleased to have Randy with us. And
Yes.
he wears a bunch of hats besides the one that you see on his head that says FAIRtax. And one of his many hats that he wears is as social media director for Americans for Fair Taxation. Now, this is the first show that we're recording after the first of the year, and that Congress is now back in session. And of course, the social media world has just been abuzz for the past several days with the idea of getting rid of the Internal Revenue Service and enacting the fair tax, because bringing the fair tax to the floor was, and I didn't know this was coming on, but it was one of the concessions that the holdout gang wrenched out of Speaker Kevin McCarthy. So they're going to bring the fair tax to the floor in Congress this session, something that has never happened before. And Randy, my question to you to start with, is this the super seismic event that we fair tax people have been waiting for decades for?
It is probably not the super seismic event, but it is certainly on the Richter scale a pretty high number event, because we've never had a full floor vote. And we now have a Speaker of the House who is committed in writing to bringing the fair tax through Ways and Means Committee. We believe, because the new chairman of Ways and Means is from Missouri. He is a former fair tax co-sponsor, and we believe that the fair tax will get voted out of the Ways and Means Committee and have a full debate and vote on the floor of the House. Now, that may not be until later this year. We don't know what the schedule is going to look like. But in the last 72 hours, about the last 4 days, we've had just a phenomenal response, mainly on Twitter, but also on YouTube, on just phone calls. I field all of the 1-800-FAIRtax, which is 800-324-7829 number that people want to call and find out, well, what the hell is this thing? I've heard it's called fair tax, and I've been talking my brains out for the last 4 days.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and a lot of activity, as you just said a moment ago, on Twitter. Of course, Twitter has been in a more open frame of mind for discussion. And I think that had a lot to do with the wildfire of responses that we saw over the last 4 or 5 days on a lot of topics regarding the 118th Congress, especially what we're talking about with eliminating the Internal Revenue Service. I think that caught a lot of people's attention, and secondly, on a tax on consumption. And a lot of people's response and comments within Twitter on the tax on consumption. Well, what do you mean? What consumption? What is consumption? And how do you tax it?
And there are so many misconceptions, and but it keeps coming back to, it hurts the poor, it hurts the poor.
Right.
And that is just a flat out false statement, because the poor now pay greater than 18% in higher cost for goods and services. They have 7.5% bitten straight out of their paycheck, and their employer has lowered the value of their wages and benefits by 7.5%. So really, the poor are starting out 30% in the hole, and all of those taxes go away under the fair tax. And if you can get people to listen and look long enough, they start to shake their heads up and down rather than side to side.
It was interesting. I saw an article the other day that says this new, national consumption tax plan is going to shift the tax burden from the wealthy to the middle class. And it was kind of funny. The people that are saying that are the same people that have been trying for years to get Donald Trump's tax returns out into the public domain so they can show that he doesn't pay any taxes. So which is it? I mean, are the wealthy paying their fair share, or does the income tax make them pay their fair share? And then they all the people that were doxxed by ProPublica that said these people are not paying their fair share. So it sounds like they're just, running around in circles. And the truth is that the fair tax will ensure that everyone does pay their fair share, because it's not full of loopholes and deductions and stuff that Trump used legally to really bring his tax bill down.
And there hasn't been a considerable amount of response once it was revealed that the president had, the former president had paid a certain amount. People have to understand that, and not just listen to the 10-second sound bites from news media and from people that are talking about it, to say, okay, well, now we understand a little bit more about it. Discussion, thought, a little bit of thought, not just a knee-jerk reaction to what the 10-second soundbite is about the fair tax. Truly, in its purest form, is going to revolutionize the economy, is going to bring it into focus, out of the doldrums that it appears to be in right now. I think folks are going to realize as they study it that it is something. And as the debate now has turned to, as you said a minute ago, Randy, bringing it out of the committee and onto the floor of the House for debate, folks are going to find out more and more about the benefits of it, as long as our representatives are out there heralding its benefits and not trying to jigger it to something that will not be as pure as it is in its form right now as HR 25.
And the great thing is it'll be broadcast live. You will have live bodies in the House. The rules package that Bob knows our Florida 3 representative very well, Kat Kamek, spoke about for 7 minutes on the floor of the House today. The rules package that's been adopted means no more proxy voting, no more remote voting. You will be in your seat working and voting live in person on TV on a roll call. And so it's going to get a straight up or down vote. You're going to hear 435 yays and nays. And I believe we will get awful close to 200 yays, 218 yays. I'm sorry.
I would think so. Go ahead, Bob. P.
Let me ask you something. Just a thought off the top of your head is that Republicans have been saying they want to get rid of the Internal Revenue Service for decades, and they've never done anything about it. But the Democrats have been opposing the fair tax for decades as well. But just how many of them are actually going to stand up and go on public record as saying, I love the IRS and I think having to turn in tax returns is a great idea, and bringing home your whole paycheck and never having to file another tax return are rotten ideas. How many folks from the other side of the aisle do you think are actually going to switch over when they actually have to go on public record?
I think they're all 212 of them are going to stand up and say that the IRS is the best thing since sliced bread and we've got to keep it. And, the hypocritical part of it is you've got an ex-bartender from New York City who is now worth $36 million, who screams and yells about the fact that, we can't cut $72 billion out of the budget of new money from the IRS because they're not going to be able to collect all the taxes they should collect. I mean, I heard it too that they're talking about, less revenue to the Treasury because of a switch to a tax on consumption, specifically the fair tax. It's all smoke and mirrors, my opinion only, that is used on a regular basis to drumbeat one after another. The 10-second soundbite comes in, and all you hear is, like you said, Randy, hurts the poor. Like we talked about, many times on this program, it actually provides a great benefit to the working poor that
that even today would just astound people. Plus the fact that immediately undocumented workers, drug dealers, the ladies of the night, international travelers would all begin to pay into our Treasury for the operation of the government. They're going to have so much money up there, they won't know what to do. And then the debate becomes, what do we do with all this money? Of course, we would say reduce that deficit immediately and start paying down some of that, and then provide for common border protection and so on.
Well, we can't get sidetracked, though, into talking about spending, because the FAIRtax bill is not about spending, it's about revenue. And it's about how the government is funded, and it's a single purpose, because the fastest way they can continue to kill the bill is to split it apart and start talking about expenditures rather than revenue. And we think that the FAIRtax bill is the cleanest, simplest, at about 131 pages of tax code, actual bill, versus 3,300 plus pages of the Internal Revenue Code, plus 77,000 pages of regulation and interpretation. We think that the FAIRtax bill is simple, visible, and efficient. And that's been my mantra on Twitter for the last 5 years. And up until Mr. Musk bought the platform, we couldn't move our number of followers at all. It was stuck at 23,300 for almost 5 years after they took away a whole bunch of followers. And right now, as of this morning, we jumped up another 600 followers, and we're at 24,300. We actually gained 623 followers in the last day and a half. And I think that momentum is going to continue to build and build and build.
Are you seeing that kind of momentum on other social media platforms as well, or is it largely just Twitter?
It's largely Twitter. I think there's still some what I call throttling or suppression on Facebook. And I think that those algorithms they're using just do not put our content, our subject matter up high enough in the news feed of enough people to stir the pot. There's been a small jump, but nothing compared to the jump on Twitter.
Would it help if people went on Facebook and posted stuff like, "Hey, this is a great idea"? Would that move the algorithms any?
Shares and reactions, and hitting any reaction other than angry. If you hit angry, then that pushes it down. If you hit love, like, or wow, then that tends to boost it up. But the most important thing is to share it to everybody. So every post you see on Facebook that has the word FAIRtax in it, or hashtag FAIRtax, or hashtag defund the IRS, or anything to do with FAIRtax, share it.
That's good. I got a question that both of y'all could respond to. Okay, the FAIRtax HR 25 gets voted out of committee. It's on the floor. Is this where we shine the big light of difference on the FAIRtax and the flat tax? Is this where somebody's going to walk into one of the debates and say, well, the flat tax is this and this, and it's a postcard and all of that happy stuff. And you'll start to see commercials from Steve Forbes every other day and that kind of thing. Is this where we begin to draw that really thick line between our FAIRtax and the flat tax, which of course is still an income tax?
The hearings in Ways and Means, and even the subcommittee hearings in Ways and Means, are where those debates are going to occur mostly. And after the bill is voted out of Ways and Means and comes toward the floor, Then you're going to hear attacks from one side, who we know who they are, and you're going to hear defenses from the other side, and you're going to have some people who are going to try to straddle and be in the middle. And those are the people that'll say, well, we have to do this in stages. Let's start with a flat income tax. That's real simple. We'll just declare it to be 12% flat on everybody. And that includes business and personal. And that means that the people only earning $30,000 a year are effectively paying over a 30% tax burden. There's nothing worse than a flat income tax. You might as well call it rinse and repeat, because it's not going to stay flat.
And the Internal Revenue Service is still a component in the operation at Treasury. But okay, so it's on the floor, and now we're talking. And wouldn't you think that in terms of making sure that it stays as it is in the current HR 25 form, what is it going to look like after the debate? Let's just say we get all the way to passage. What are we talking about? Are we talking about something that looks exactly like what it's written, or do we talk about we've got a few things that have to happen, or is it all or nothing, or what are we going to be comfortable with if it gets that far?
Well, there's a couple strategies, and I expect we'll see both of them. One is pick it to death with amendments, and try to pull it apart into parts by adding amendment after amendment after amendment. And that strategy is going to have to be blocked by whoever the leaders are that are going to take control of shepherding the bill, starting with Buddy Carter in Georgia, Matt Gaetz in Florida, possibly even our own Kat Cammack. We're hoping that Chip Roy in Texas will step up. And I think you'll see some of the same people that were involved in those negotiations with Speaker McCarthy that helped get the bill on the floor. The other strategy is going to be to try and destroy it in the media. That's a strategy that's going to be even harder to fight, because the media is pretty much biased against us anyway.
And anything to do with free markets and et cetera. So that undercurrent is going to be there. We look forward to that battle, but all of the folks that are out there watching and listening to the program that understand the fair tax and want to do something, I think the one thing would be to call the folks that are on the committee on Ways and Means, especially if they're in your district, and say, look, fair tax, pure and simple, without there being any changes, it has to move through that way. And then, of course, follow through with the 218 or so and the members of Congress that are your representatives to make sure that they understand what they're looking at. And I think there are a lot of folks out there that know about in Congress that know about the fair tax. And they don't know necessarily what to think about it, because they're not at the point where they've got to decide how they continue their taking care of business, their own business, versus making sure that this, which really helps the entire country over the long haul. I get concerned sometimes, about what this looks like. And we're at a point now where we can say, hey, this is actually happening and it's very exciting. But if you're watching and listening to the show today, I would encourage you to get on the phone with your representative now and begin that conversation, and send them some information, and tell your neighbors and all your family members to do the same thing.
And it's about education and advocacy. This isn't going to get a vote in the Senate in this term. The vote in the Senate isn't going to happen until the 119th Congress in 2023 or 5. So, Bob, did you have something? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I do. I want to ask you one quick question and then get into something else. So we got about 8.5 minutes left here. You're mentioning that you think the media is going to be slanted against us. I would think that people like Neil Cavuto and others in the business media might be more, inclined to see what a good thing this is for business. You think we can find some allies over there in the business media?
Unless they're on the payroll of places that make a lot of money off of explaining the income tax and teaching people how to use avoidance strategies. There are certainly some think tanks out there and some groups that like the income tax from the standpoint of cash flow. So they're going to be ponying up against us. We'll just have to take it as it comes. I had a chance to talk to economist Steve Moore about it, and he goes hot and cold depending upon which team he happens to be working for at the time. But his real feeling is he loves the fair tax. There's times when he's on a team where he can't really say it, and that's a problem.
And that's the same truth for the media too. I mean, the faces at the anchor desk are not necessarily the ones that are able to advocate for anything, because the producer and the general manager and everybody up on the next floor of management there, at whatever network it is, they're the ones that are pretty much dictating the general coverage or consensus on any particular matter that they may be reporting on.
Another thing I wanted to get into real quick, Randy, Bob and I are going to get into this in a bit more detail next week here on FAIRtax Power Radio, but I was looking at congress.gov at the co-sponsors that have signed on. 9 signed on immediately the day that it was introduced, including Kat Kammett. Byron Donalds came on a couple of days later. But of the 30 co-sponsors we had last Congress, 25 are back in this Congress. 16 are on there. We've picked up 4 new co-sponsors that were not co-sponsors in the previous Congress. And leading that list is a young lady from Georgia named Marjorie Taylor Greene. Comment on how you think her presence in our camp is going to either help us or hurt us.
Well, I think it will light a fire.
No doubt. Absolutely. Marjorie is definitely an arsonist. No doubt about it.
And I believe another young lady who was hanging out with Matt Gaetz during the speaker battle, Lauren Boebert, will be signing on shortly. You're going to see some names that you won't expect to see. And I'm not able to go into every one right now until they're actually on the bill. But I think we're going to see a near record number of co-sponsors in this term. There are going to be a lot of people. Matter of fact, Florida is going to lead the pack, and I believe Florida could be in the 16 to 18 range on co-sponsors.
I tell you what, I hope so. I hope. Is Vern Buchanan still in this Congress? I didn't look.
Yeah, he's in Sarasota, and he's probably, now that he's off of Ways and Means, his old pat excuse for not co-sponsoring has gone away. So we're gonna rally a group to get down there and pigeonhole Congressman Buchanan, and just south of us here, Florida 11, Dan Webster. We're going to pigeonhole him again. He gives us the old tired excuse, well, I just don't co-sponsor bills. Well, guess what? He co-sponsored 30 in the last session.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that doesn't hold water.
Yeah, that's not holding water. So
now, Bob, you're going to have to get your friend Virginia Fox back on. She has not signed on she may be back on it now by the time this airs. Yeah. But as the day we're recording it, she's not quite on it, but she's definitely should be on board with us.
Do you think now that our late Ron Malero, our co-sponsor before I came on and joined with Bob, what do you think he's saying up there at the pearly gates? Is he yelling down from heaven that this is great, and is he in the midst of the spirit of Ron Malero, in the midst of the committee now?
He and our other beloved friend Nick Rodelick are probably leading a large FAIRtax delegation in heaven, and they are probably just cheering and yelling right now. Matter of fact, I can hear both of them sometimes in the back of my brain. Those gentlemen were heroes, and they worked as hard as anybody that I knew. And I've been doing.
They were.
20 plus years.
Okay, real quick, we got about 3 minutes to go here. The media, you've actually had some media contact FAIRtax people now. That's one of the things that have been good. Media has been ignoring us forever because they just thought the FAIRtax is just not politically viable. But now that it's actually going to come to the floor and be debated, we've got some media outlets that are actually talking to us now, do we not?
Surprisingly, even the New York Times put in kind of the pat article. The one side wants to defund the IRS, and they threw the FAIRtax into that article. But even more surprisingly, the Wall Street Journal has contacted two of us and told us that they are likely to do a fairly long article. And one of our directors, Jade Wally, has been interviewed for that. And they even talked to me for about 18, 20 minutes.
Okay, well, may we suggest that people who hear some of these articles understand that the people that are writing the articles and doing the interviews may or may not be really well versed on the FAIRtax, and that folks should go to fairtax.org.
Yes.
I'd start with reading the FAQ. Just read through the entire FAQ, educate yourself on what it is, how it works, what it isn't, what it will and won't do, and that way then you can look at some of this media attention that actually some of it might be less than accurate, and even though they're not really trying to be hostile to us, but it's just a case that they don't have it right. So that's a really good resource for folks to go to and check out.
I have time for a 1-minute commercial, which is you can have more fun walking and shopping with a defund the IRS t-shirt on.
Yes.
You ever thought you'd have in a day. I had 8 people coming up to me throughout the day today. Thumbs up, we like the FAIRtax. One guy wanted palm cards. I pointed him to fairtaxstore.org to get your palm cards, get your defund the IRS t-shirts, get your roll of FAIRtax ends the IRS stickers, and spread the word.
Absolutely. And let me make one more comment. I think that's perfect. That shirt, I've loved it. I've signed on before the program started, and I said, I need that shirt. Not that one, but one like it. And
sleeve, long sleeve, and sweatshirts. Take your pick.
If you go onto Twitter, and Twitter is sort of it's live. People are on there commenting, and I would suggest that you go on, folks, and I'm talking to you who are listening and watching on the web and different places. Go to Twitter. If you don't have an account, get one. Make it something to do with the FAIRtax, or at least go through, especially where the comments are about the FAIRtax, hashtag FAIRtax, and what Randy said just a second ago, fairtax.org/FAQ, and that puts the link right there in the Twitter feed where people are germinating about and making comments about defund the IRS and tax on consumption, et cetera, and just put it out there where people are going to fall all over it. And then hopefully they'll be able to take a moment and look and see exactly, what the FAIRtax is, that it is rocket jet fuel for our economy.
It is. And I'm afraid, go ahead, Randy.
Are we over time, Bob? I'm sorry.
Just a little, go ahead.
A new feature in Twitter that I think is very exciting. It's moderated chat rooms.
Yes.
And be in this giant audio room, and all these people come in and they can put their hand up if they want to speak, and you can either call on them or not call on them. I saw some with 8,000 people in these chat rooms. And if you run in the chat room and it's about the FAIRtax, that's an instant way for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or an hour where you can reach a whole lot of people for free.
Excellent.
All right. Well, I'm afraid that's going to wrap up this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. Time flies when you're having fun. Randy, thank you so much for I know you're a busy fella, and we'd have you on more often if you didn't have so much on your plate. But hopefully, I would love to see FAIRtax Power Radio be put out of business, because we will get the FAIRtax. But at least we've got the ball rolling now. Hopefully, it'll make its way down the side of the mountain and pick up more steam and more momentum as we go around. And even if it doesn't pass in this Congress, we're now on the map. And so we certainly hope that's foretells good things for the FAIRtax. But I say that's going to wrap us up. I'm Bob Paxton.
Bob Scarborough here.
Randy Fisher here.
Reminding you the FAIRtax is the only truly fair tax. And once you understand it,
you'll demand it. There it is.
So what do you need from me to get these taxes collected?
Glad you asked, because there is a fair amount of information you need to be aware of.
That's your tax plan?
Oh, no, this is just the revisions for this year's tax plan. What I need from you is you need to keep track of all of your income, as well as any taxes that you've already paid, also any gifts that you received or gifts you've given to churches or charities or individuals throughout the entire year. Do you do any side jobs?
Every now and again.
Great, because there's some more information about that right here. Everything you need to know right here. So just simply compile that, send it in to us. Be careful, make sure there's no mistakes. If we do find mistakes, or maybe we can fine you or, throw you in jail. So you might want to be aware of that.
And what do you need from me?
As an individual, nothing. As a business owner, or if you're doing side jobs, yes, you would have to collect taxes on that, but, well, it's all right here.
Can I get a copy of